Hello and welcome to another episode of Geared Toward Gear. My name is Sean and I am so glad you're here. Today is part 2. We are revisiting the Applied Weapons Technology aluminum scales that I put on my Benchmade Mini Grip Tillion. In my original video, I said that I really liked the scales, the fit, the comfort, everything about them, but I was kind of curious about the durability, and so I carried this knife every single day for 8 consecutive days. And I hammered nails with it, just like I said that I would. So we're going to cut to some film here of me doing just that, of hammering some nails. Then we're going to come back. We're going to look at the damage, if you want to call it that was done just from carrying it throughout the week, which is kind of hard to see even from this distance. But we'll get in close, show you the kind of day-to-day damage, and then we will take a further inspection at the damage caused when we hammered nails with this knife. So stand by, we're going to cut to the nail hammering clip and we'll be right back. All right, welcome to the garage. So let's hammer some nails with the knife. Something I never thought I'd say. So let me quickly go over the setup here. So we got a pressure treated 2x4 that I've clamped down to the bench, and I've got a total of 4 nails. So the first 3 are all essentially tacks. They're 1 inch, or I'm sorry, 1.25 inches. So they're sunk in about 1/4 inch into the 2x4. And then this last screw over here is a galvanized 2 1/4 inch nail that I sunk in probably 1/4 inch or so. So there's about 2 inches sticking out. And we're going to use this knife with the Advanced Weapons Technology, or I'm sorry, Applied Weapons Technology scales to hammer these nails. And the concept here is that I'm going to place the knife onto the nail and then use the rubber mallet to strike the knife, thus hopefully driving the nail into the 2x4. Hopefully the audio is coming through okay. We are in the garage, but I do have my mic going, so we should be good to go. And in case you're wondering, this is a steam engine that my grandfather hand built from scratch that I'm kind of working on restoring. And that shadow you see is from my bench grinder. So I did do a test of this already, so there's going to be a little bit of damage already on the scales, which is to be expected, but we're mainly looking to see if they catastrophically fail or if they affect the function of the knife. So let's start with these little guys, and depending on how it does, we'll move it on up. So let's get into it. And I don't have a whole lot of room to work with as far as where I can strike the knife. Should have taken the pocket clip off, but we'll work with it. Throw on a pair of, well, no, we're good. Okay, so I think the biggest challenge is going to be keeping everything kind of plumb as far as keeping the nail at a 90-degree angle to the wood. So here we go. Let's give it a shot. It's wanting to bend the nail. And the reason for that is that it's really hard to keep this flat on the head of the nail, so it's kind of hitting it at an angle, I think, most times. But it's slowly but surely doing what we want it to do. Let's move it way up here. Let's get crazy. Way up here by the pivot. All right, that one is effectively driven all the way in. So let's do another one. Let's do it again up here by the pivot, where we probably shouldn't be doing it, but who cares? All right. Who does this? Who hammers nails with their knife? I do, apparently. And that one is sunk in all the way. Got some cosmetic damage, of course, which is to be expected. But we will power through. We'll do one more of these little guys, and then we'll move up to the big old 2-inch galvanized nail. If I've called these screws, my bad. But we'll move up to the galvanized nail if we can get through this one. I think we're going to be able to. I think these smaller kind of brad nail, tack nails, you know, they're not too much of a challenge, it doesn't seem like. Man, we almost got that one countersunk. Okay, so I feel good about that. So now we're going to probably move over to kind of this area here. to the left, or I guess to the right rather, of this screw. You can see I did a small test already, but we're going to try that area for the big screw here, or the big nail. I don't know why I keep calling them screws. Let's put it closer to the screw itself. All right, I'm going to try to hold this as flat as possible. Here we go. Did it go in any? Yeah, it's definitely driving the nail. It's wanting to bend the nail slightly. I'm trying to find that area where it stays plumb. But we'll just kind of keep straightening it out and see if we can get this thing most of the way driven in. Let's move it up here again. Maybe move it down here a bit. This is so dumb. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this for science, for the good of mankind. You know what? Let's flip it over. What am I doing? I got more room on this side. Let's flip it over and strike it here. All right, so the nail bent. It went in about a little over an inch. So we drove that nail a little over an inch into this 2x4. So let's take a quick assessment of the damage here. Quite a bit of cosmetic damage, which is to be expected on both sides. Looks like a pretty good divot there. So I'm expecting the function to be impaired. Okay, it opens and it locks. It locks up really strong. The axis lock disengages and it closes, but I think it may be damaged beyond usefulness. So let's get back inside. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We're going to head inside and take a little closer assessment at the damage done by what I just did to this knife. So stand by and we'll meet you back inside. And we are back. So there you have it. It hammered nails. So let me get this guy closed real quick. And before we get into kind of how it functions and what was the real damage caused by hammering nails, because there was definitely some damage caused, let's quickly look at the just kind of day-to-day damage. So if we just kind of don't even worry about what the hammer did or the nails, let's just kind of look at the scales in general. So if we look at it at some different angles and kind of let the light hit it, you'll see some little scratches and snail trails. At all of the corners, the anodization definitely wore off, where you see that silver color coming through. That all happened throughout the week. Near the finger choil here, you're going to see the same thing on all of these peaks. We had the anodization rub off. That all happened throughout the week. And again, if we get just the right angle in this area here, you will see a number of little scratches and scrapes and little imperfections just throughout the knife. Even on the spine here, you'll see, again, these edges were kind of worn down a bit, even just a touch right there on the top of that backspacer. I was able to get the backspacer flush. That was one of the things that I mentioned in my first video, is that the backspacer was not flush. All I did to fix that was loosened this screw and backed it out just a hair and essentially pried the backspacer up in this direction by using, something kind of like that. And it worked and it flushed out perfectly. There's a little bit of wiggle room. The hole that's drilled in the backspacer is larger than the diameter of the screw in the actual scale. So there was just enough play in the backspacer itself to slide it up, so it is perfectly flush. So as far as fitment, it's all good. One thing I'll also add is that when I carried this throughout the week, I did not clip it to my pocket, not one time. I carried it in the bottom of my pocket loose with a flashlight, with the same flashlight every day. It was my Lumentop Tool AA 2.0 Those two items were in my pocket every single day for 8 days. So imagine this is the flashlight. They were constantly, and it was quite annoying to be honest with you. They were constantly bumping into each other and rubbing up against each other for 8 consecutive days. And I did that intentionally to, I guess, accelerate the rate of, wear that would take place on the aluminum. So I was trying to simulate, what these would look like after, say a month of carrying it in your pocket. So definitely some wear, but they certainly did not get damaged during the course of those 8 days, even being carried with something else. The knife functioned perfectly. I used it exclusively for those 8 days. I didn't use any other knives for the most part. And I still need to clean up the blade a bit, but it did well. So now let's talk about hammering nails. So on this side, you can see obvious cosmetic damage from every single strike where the nail and the handle scales came in contact with one another. All of the anodization is gone. It's down to bare aluminum, and that was to be expected. Now on this side, we have a massive, and it's maybe hard to pick up the depth here, but there's a pretty massive divot in the aluminum there. And if I kind of move this around, you'll be able to pick up the dimensions of that a little bit better. It is a very, very noticeable divot into the aluminum, and that was from pounding on that last larger galvanized nail. And when I was done, in the last clip that you saw, when I opened it, it was very difficult and slow, but it did lock. And when I released the axis lock, it was stuck, and I could close it, but it went slow. And that's because all this was squished. Not a ton, but just enough to make it essentially, I could open it one-handed, but it was a two-handed closing knife. Well, now it functions just like it did the day it was brand new. So how could that be? After I hammered 4 nails with it, how could it be this smooth? The centering is basically dead center, if I can get that. So how is that possible? How is this knife smooth again? Well, very simply, once I was done, I realized that the liners had kind of been squished together a little bit up here in this area near the pivot and near the axis lock, right where that giant divot is. So these steel liners were kind of squished a little bit. So I took a screwdriver, just a standard slotted screwdriver, clamped the knife to the bench, put the screwdriver between the two liners, and lifted up as a lever, and essentially stretched these two liners back away from each other. And it literally took me 30 seconds, and within 30 seconds, it was perfectly smooth again. I put 1 single drop of KPL lube in here, and it is functioning beautifully. So, moral of the story is, I think the scales are of high quality. I think they'll last. I think they'll hold up. They're going to show some wear. It's aluminum. That's inevitable. They can technically hammer a nail. Having said that, I would not recommend it. I am happy that this knife functions beautifully, and I can continue to carry it and use it and love it. It's certainly got some character that it didn't have before, but I think that makes it all the more kind of special. And if anybody ever asks me, hey, why is your knife all beat to hell? I'll have an interesting story to tell. So I'm actually, frankly, looking forward to it kind of continuing to wear over time and get all of those edges, kind of that battle-worn look almost, where all the color ultimately will probably go away across all the corners. Probably won't hammer any more nails. If you buy any scales from Applied Weapons Technologies, I would not recommend that you hammer nails with them either, but technically speaking, it can be done, especially with those little bitty nails. It didn't have too much of a problem, but that big galvanized nail going into a pressure-treated 2x4 came pretty close to doing more damage than this thing could recover from, but it did. So during the course of the time that I carried the knife, I really did come to really enjoy the feel and the comfort of these scales, and so I ordered another set for a Benchmade bug out. I have an idea for a Benchmade bug out build that I'm going to do with those scales. So my final verdict is that I think they make a high quality product. It's going to show some wear. Just be aware of that you're going to get these spots here where the color is going to go away. And as long as you're okay with that, I think it's a good product. So I am very happy with them. Again, happy it survived. Was it necessary for me to do that? No, not at all. Was it fun? Yeah, it was a lot of fun actually. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. That's my kind of final thoughts on the Applied Weapons Technology aluminum scales for the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to you soon.